The Lorna M. Johnson Global Enterprises are rooted in equality and justice. We are committed to exploring innovative, non-traditional modalities and approaches to positively shift cultural norms relating to bias, hate, and disparities. Thank you for joining us today as we discuss the fierce urgency of this moment, a great moment of healing communications between friends and uniting us within race, culture, faith, media, and politics. We must be the change we seek. In the spirit of my hero and friend, the late great John Lewis, aka the soul of the nation, we have work to do towards that more perfect union and a better us. Get into good trouble, he would tell us, by following the compass of love for one another. Open our hearts and inspire the best in each of us, eliminating the virus of bigotry and confusion. Responding to the call of our moral compass for a more perfect union, I ask each and every one of you to join me in uniting your world, my world, our world, by sharing your uniting ideas at Live with Lorna. The future is in your hands. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the globe. Welcome to the Lorna M. Johnson Global Enterprises Virtual Town Hall. You know what to do. Share with family and friends, and most importantly, let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you for tuning in to Live with Lorna. One of my favorite Jamaican heroes, Marcus Messiah Garvey, wisely reminds us, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. So today on Live with Lorna, follow me as we look into the root causes of the huge wealth gap between African Americans and their white counterparts. For so long, the Black community has been financially crippled. We've been told it's because of our inherent laziness, lack of business acumen, and that we do not have entrepreneurial spirit. We've even been told that we need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, even though we're barely had a boot. The fact is, we've been deprived from obtaining wealth through systematic economic apartheid, manifesting itself through the deprivation of access to capital with which to build. And what's more, every time we do manage to pull ourselves up by the proverbial bootstraps, we're massacred and our efforts burned to the ground time and time again by white supremacists as authorities turn a blind eye. You see, our last century, Black folks built independence and autonomous community. But that didn't last for long because white supremacists interpreted the newfound economic success of these communities as a threat to white dominance. Thus, Greenwood and Rosewood, the Tulsa Massacre, and many others were destroyed. Their true aim was not only to destroy the community, but to cut the Black man down and return him to a place of inferiority and external servitude. For those of you who do not know, Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 remains to this day one of the most violent episodes of dispossession and economic apartheid in the history of our country. It has robbed Black families of unquantifiable generational wealth and so much more. On this 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre, we will speak to how these injustices and others like it continue to mar Black people and our wealth, or lack thereof. The economic prosperity of Greenwood and other affluent Black communities like it was literally obliterated overnight on a false pretense, a lie. A Black man was accused of attempted rape and assault of a white woman. Sounds familiar? Well, that was Tulsa, 1921. In 1923, a Rosewood resident was accused of assaulting a white woman, resulting in Rosewood Massacre. I could go on and on with examples like that. Fast forward. In 1989, 5 young Black teenagers was accused, charged, and imprisoned for the rape of a white woman, only to be found innocent years after they were robbed of their lives and future livelihoods. And even this past year, 2020, another Black man was accused of attacking a white woman in Central Park. You know what I'm talking about. You remember that? The bird watcher. This all sounds too familiar. So when does it end? And where do we go from here? The truth is, Tulsa and these atrocities occurred because the economic prosperity of Black people is perceived as a threat to white supremacy. The Tulsa Massacre and its aftermath served to effectively impede African American prosperity until this very day, serving as a blueprint for white supremacists for the economic oppression of the Black community through systemic economic apartheid. By destroying communities like Tulsa and the reputation of Black men, white supremacists can maintain a white dominant, Black subordinate relationship. Other losses caused as a result of the massacre were the loss of intellectual property, inventions, and patents, and the evaporation of generational wealth. Today, let's explore these truths and solutions with some legends and leaders who have beat the odds. Our guests today are Ambassador Charles Stith, former ambassador to Tanzania, Derrick Johnson, President and CEO of NAACP, Attorney Hill Harper, actor, activist, and entrepreneur. Let's start with Derrick Johnson. Derrick Johnson serves as President and CEO of NAACP, a title he has held since October of 2017. A long-standing member and leader of the NAACP, Mr. Johnson had helped guide the association through a period of reinvigorating and envisioning. Born in Detroit and received his Juris Doctorate degree from South Texas College of Law in Houston. A veteran activist who has dedicated his career to defending the rights and improving the lives of Mississippians. He is frequently featured on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, and many others, advocating on behalf of the Black community and all those who are affected by systemic oppression and prejudice. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you Mr. Derrick Johnson. Hello, let me say President Johnson. Good to see you and welcome to Live with Lorna.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Great. You were born in Detroit, but attended college in Mississippi, Deep South. How did this Northern and Southern lens shape your thinking around Black wealth or the lack thereof?
Well, I was a part of the reverse migration. Many of our families migrated north in pursuit of job opportunities. Those job opportunities were based on organized labor, and particularly in Detroit, where the auto industry paid very good wages. At one point, the city of Detroit ranked the highest in terms of per capita income for African Americans. But then we began to see the turn in the mid 80s. And we see many people get laid off. But that was also coupled with the emergence of a new entrepreneurial class. When I got to Mississippi at Tougaloo College, historically Black college, I also began to recognize that reverse migration, how many individuals had moved north, retired well, and began to come back and buy property, large tracts and acreage of property. And the important part of that experience from my perspective is, one, as a people, we migrate where opportunities present itself. As a community, we are better able to leverage our dollars if we understand how the value of land and property and the production of land and property can aid in generational wealth. And then thirdly, the importance of leveraging collectively around entrepreneurship and opportunities. The individuals who pursue economic opportunities as long individuals can be successful, but the longevity is how we do it collectively so that all of us can begin to benefit as a community.
That is awesome. And isn't that what we need to do? Really? Some people will argue that, Black people did well during segregation than when we had integration. What do you say?
I think it's a distraction. It's not true. There's no numbers that bear that out. Although we have to recognize that systemic and structural racism and barriers were in place then as they are now. So as opposed to make these past arguments about what was good then compared to now, we should be focusing our energy on how do we pave a way to a new future? How do we leverage our currency, our vote in this democracy to demand the type of public policy to knock down the structural barriers so that we can actually build wealth? The number one prohibitor of wealth, in my opinion, right now is the student loan crisis. That you have so many individuals who did exactly what they were told to do, went to college, and because they were first and second generations, they are overburdened with debt, and they cannot really leverage their opportunity to purchase property and homes. And in this country, the number one creator of wealth, generational wealth, is property ownership.
But that was also knocked away during the Tulsa massacre. And how do you think people from that generation fared to now? Because we've lost so much during that time in terms of generational wealth.
What the lessons of Tulsa have taught us, history, that we will be a target because of our success. But we cannot allow the reality of us being targeted to stop us from succeeding. Secondly, the generation who are still alive, the descendants, the families, they are owed reparations, period, full stop. Reparations from the government, because it was government-sanctioned violence against African Americans who was existing peacefully. Reparations for corporate benefactors who refused to honor insurance claims, and those individuals who lost everything after building such success. And the recognition that corporate colluders are all also responsible for the harm that was done over 100 years ago. Whether it's Tulsa, Rosewood, Mount Bayou, Mississippi, Princetown of North Carolina, all of those pockets of Black success, the 100 and so HBCUs that exist and who have been underdeveloped intentionally, all of those institutions and individuals who are impacted are owed repair for the harm that was intentionally inflicted on our community.
Just for doing good. And every time we try to pick ourselves up, they said we're not picking ourselves up by the bootstrap, but every time that we try to do that, what do you think that impact that is having the psyche of Black men and Black families, who every time we try to do good, it is taken away from us? And Massacre, do you think it plays a psyche on the Black man's or the Black people's mind?
Absolutely, but it is up for you and I to work hard to overcome that. We have been under a microscope and a target for over 400 years. And it's the whole African diaspora. It's not only the Africans here in America, it's Africans in the Caribbean, African in South America, Brazil, Africans on the continents. It's this constant reign of terror. If you think about Haiti, Haiti is still being punished because Tulsa Overture took down Napoleon's army. If you think about any of the successes that we've seen, we must learn from those successes and build back better.
Amen. Speaking my language, that's for sure. The Tulsa Race Massacre remains to this day one of the most violent episodes of disposition and economic apartheid in our history. Can we talk a little bit about then generational wealth? This event actually had been backed both direct and indirect impact. For example, we've been robbed from millions of dollars, right? And then we have to go start back from scratch. Some of these folks had to go do maid service when they were very wealthy people. What do you say to some of these people who are still struggling to this day, again, with the college tuition, because they have all that burden on them?
You know, like the Phoenix, still we rise. You know, every barrier that's been put in front of us, unfortunately, we have carnage, people who get left behind, but we continue to progress forward. When you think of someone like John Rogers, the founder of Area Capital, and the fact that it was his grandfather who owned the major hotel in Tulsa, still we rise. If you think about the many generations who had to flee from that area, if you track some of the lineage, you may find the nuggets of success that those families were able to repair from. You're talking about a generation who fled riots and massacre and genocide. And when they landed, many of them were able to teach the children the lessons of the past. And if we look closely, I would be shocked if we didn't find that some of the most successful people among our communities are descendants of the Tulsa Massacre.
I think I'd agree with you there. You know, actually, I had John on my show a few months ago, and learned that his family place got burnt down in Tulsa. So yes, and he's thriving and doing well. While we are not physically watching Tulsa burn, though, because that's the old caveman way, do you believe we are still experiencing this systemic economic oppression of Black in more modern ways that are not even being talked about by the media or leaders?
Oh, absolutely. If you think about where the broadband cable have been laid over the last 20 years, they have deliberately excluded communities. In 2009, I co-authored a report on broadband connectivity. And we learned that whether it was in Harlem, before Harlem turned and was gentrified, or in Chula, Mississippi, that broadband connectivity skipped over the Black community. And in some areas, as opposed to connect the existing communities, they connected wide open fields for future development. If you track the fights in Michigan around the state taking over the city of Detroit, Benton Harbor, Flint, Saginaw, all Black cities, 8 of them, it was over the fight for the control of the water system in Detroit, which generated wealth. If you think about all of what took place in building out our highway systems, they went through Black communities, pockets that were thriving, and they broke up to bring in the highway system, and we were never paid our just due for the property that we owned. There are multipliers of examples where structural racism and barriers, the redlining that took place, and to exclude us from buying property, and then the reverse redlining that came after that gave us loans that people wouldn't qualify. Only see the mortgage crisis hit African Americans harder than anyone else. It is a systemic problem that's government-based, corporately colluded on, and we must, as a community, become even more wiser on how we navigate through this maze so that we can, again, rise up like the phoenix.
And that's what I'm talking about in terms of, so what are the leaders? Are we really doing what we should be doing to address these things? Because it's not about the $15 an hour minimum wage. It's about who controls the money that gets distributed. And that's one of the things John Rogers and we talked about, because the allocation of fund, trillions and trillions of dollars is out there, and only a minimum, just a 1% fraction that is being given to Black people of any semblance in terms of, say, for us to be innovative and get venture capital funds, or even to, and these are our pension dollars. These are our pension dollars that is being managed by the homogeneous groups, and particularly white males. And we know that every studies have shown that if diversity yields more return on your investments, but yet it's not being done, and nobody's speaking out about this. So how can we start this conversation?
Well, I think the conversation has started. I think there's a quiet revolution of individuals that's followed in the footsteps of a John Rogers. If you think about whether it's Ray McGuire, what he has done at Citi before he decided to run for mayor, or Jim Reynolds at Loop Financial, or you look at Kelvin Shanks, which is now the largest money managing operation for African Americans, or Capri Capital. I mean, we have this quiet revolution that's building with these fund managers and other entrepreneurs, David Grain. I mean, we're building, but the revolution will not be televised, nor should it be.
Okay, all right. I guess we'll watch and see. Okay, this time I'm gonna bring on another guest, Ambassador Charles Stith. From a worldview, understanding wealth can be challenging for many Black Americans. I'd like to welcome our next guest to take us into the global implication of Black wealth, politics, and religion. Ambassador Stith is currently the executive chairman of the Pula Group, a family of companies focused on high-value investments opportunities in Africa. He served as Tanzanian ambassador under the Clinton administration in a traumatic period after the August 1998 bombing of the United States Embassy in Dar es Salaam. Because of his able and steady leadership, the embassy emerged and set a new standard for U.S. embassies promoting U.S. trade and investments in Africa. Ambassador Stith is a graduate of Harvard University of Divinity and served as the senior minister of the historic Union United Methodist Church in Boston, and has been an adjunct faculty member of Boston College and Harvard Divinity School. Please welcome my friend, Ambassador Charles Stith. Welcome, Ambassador Stith, to Live with Lorna.
Well, it's great to be here with you. I listened to part of your conversation with the NAACP president, Derrick Johnson. And I must say I was impressed with the questions and equally impressed with the responses to those questions.
And our next guest is going to be attorney Hale Harper. Hale Harper. Hale is an entrepreneur and award-winning actor, best-selling author, and humanitarian. Currently, Hale stars in ABC's #1 television drama, The Good Doctor, for its 4th season. He is the founder and chairman of the Black Wall Street Digital Wallet. Hale is also on the board of directors of the National Black Bank Fund and as named honorary national co-chair of the Redevelopment Black Wall Street by the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce. Additionally, Hale was appointed by President Barack Obama to serve on the U.S. President's Cancer Panel. Hale's passion for technology, financial literacy, and social and economic justice keeps him on the front line and in demand as a speaker and business lead worldwide. He graduated from Harvard Law School. Hale, welcome. Thank you for joining me here at Live with Lorna.
Thank you so much. Great to be on.
Great. And you have, this is the power team of men here, the powerful Black men that we have in this audience today. We have President Derrick Johnson from the NAACP. We have Ambassador Charles Stith, former ambassador to Tanzania under the Clinton administration. And we have one of the most sought after men in the world, I heard, if I may say. So we have some beautiful people here, and we're going to be talking today about how we trying to harness the best of us, what's left of us, or what we have in us, despite the circumstances that we are faced with in our society today. Hill, tell us about this tour you're on and the significance of being in Tulsa during the 100th anniversary of the massacre.
Certainly. Thank you so much. May 31st and June 1st will mark the centennial of the Black Wall Street race massacre that occurred. And for the past, 10 years ago, I wrote a book, actually right here, this book called The Wealth Cure. It's all about how do we cure the racial wealth gap. But 10 years ago, the technology didn't exist for us to truly scale impact and do things the way we can, quite frankly, now. So my call 2 years ago was, could I create a digital platform that replicated the brick and mortar success of group economic success of the original brick and mortar Black Wall Street? And I believe we've done that. And we're launching it May 31st in Tulsa, making some major announcements around it. It's going to be a digital wallet that's going to allow for financial literacy, financial capacity building, as well as investing into new digital currency, Bitcoin, and crypto assets. And so if you want to think about it, it's a Black-owned Coinbase, so to speak, or Black-owned Cash App. And we look forward to partnering with Brother President Derrick and the NAACP. I know that's one of their charges, is to build wealth, to get rid of payday lenders, to get rid of check cashing spots, rent to own, and all the onerous financial products that literally steal billions of dollars out of our community. We can do that on the Black Wall Street platform. And it's going to take a partnership. Dr. King said we're all tied together in a single garment of mutual destiny. And we have to do this together. And that's actually how they built wealth in the original brick and mortar Black Wall Street. O.W. Gurley, when he founded those 35 blocks, didn't say, hey, I'm rich, I'm going to have Gurley Hotel, Gurley Apartments, Gurley Grocery. He said, no. I'm going to give loans and help J.B. Stratford start the most successful Black-owned hotel. I'm going to help Mr. Williams start the most successful theater called the Dreamland Theater on Greenwood Avenue. And I'm going to help homeowners buy their own homes. So we have 1,200 homes and businesses, and a rising tide raises all boats. And so that's what we're looking to do on the digital platform. And I'm so excited about it because we've built something pretty special.
That sounds really, really awesome. President Derrick, did you want to add anything to or make any comments about?
So it's exciting to hear what's on the horizon. It's very important for us to take advantage in this digital technology age where we couldn't connect now. Digital platforms such as what Hill is talking about would allow us to really accelerate the opportunities to protect our communities from the predators that have always lurked in our communities, whether it's payday lenders, whether it's bad home mortgages that's robbing our communities, and then reverse that and really participate in collective economics. Someone once asked me, said, well, why is it Black folks don't work together? I say, well, what are you talking about? That's not true. We've been doing collective economics for years. It's called the Black Church. And we got to recognize that's what it is. It is generational. We have to now take that cooperative model and put a different lens on it so that we can all prosper moving forward. We prosper with our souls in the church. Now we can prosper in our bank accounts in this digital age in ways in which we can all look back and say, we started something new, creative, innovative, that's generational.
Absolutely. And I'll say this to follow on President Johnson. You know, one of my favorite stories, because I always like stories because I think we learn through stories, is from the Black Wall Street, where Mr. Williams, who owned Dreamland Theater, gave a loan to another Black man to open up a theater across the street on Greenwood Avenue. Now, in this day and age, you'd say, whoa, that's competition. Why would you do that? It was a foresight and saying, hey, the more people we bring to the ecosystem, we all benefit. So if you have a great show that's selling out and folks can't get into your theater, they'll come over and see the show over my theater and vice versa. And that's the type of thought process that President Johnson just talked about. And we have to do that. That's in part what this platform with your show allows us. President Johnson and I aren't normally connected. Lorna, you and I aren't normally connecting, but technology allows us to connect without intermediaries getting in the way to take before the connective piece. So if we can leverage that, we can raise all ships.
That is awesome. I just love this conversation and where we're going, because I'm all about elevating and uplifting our people and teaching us about financial literacy. So I knew I had the right people on the show today because we're all business folks and we understand it. And Derrick, I just love the way you have these perfect answers to these questions. You just amaze me every time you open your mouth, and I've listened to you time and time again, and you're just so awesome. Pundits say that Tulsa Massacre did not only wipe away the hard work of Blacks, it made it very difficult to rebuild, and it stifled innovation in the Black community for nearly a century, which created a massive wealth gap between African Americans and their white counterpart. And I think, I think what you're doing is just the right thing to connect us back together. So I am really excited about some of the projects, what you're working on. And I think this is the only way for us. Technology is the way to go. And that's the only way we're going to be able, because technology is blind, it's colorblind. And so we have no excuses once we get involved into this technology, because we will be a part of where the funding is. We will be a part of where all the changes are happening. So anybody want to add to that? And Ambassador Stith, feel free to jump in.
I will say this. The one thing that we always need to include in the conversation, and I think it's left out, and I'd be interested to hear what the ambassador has to say and what President Johnson has to say, is that deep-seated systemic racism, legacy racism, doesn't just hurt Black folks. It hurts white folks in the country. Take a look at Tulsa. Tulsa was poised to be a leader in the South. Tulsa today should look like Houston, should look like Dallas, should look like Atlanta, should look like Miami. It should look like a Southern Beacon City. It was ahead of all of these places. However, that incident of deep-seated racism and massacre destroyed the growth of that city. And it is struggling to this day. The white folks are struggling. The Black folks certainly are struggling. And so this type of thing, we always talk about how much it's hurt the Black community, and certainly it has crippled us with a boot on our neck. But it's also destroyed white folk, and they don't realize that. And that's so astounding. There's no reason Tulsa shouldn't be Houston today, but it's not even close.
You know, what was amazing, we say boot on neck, it was Faneuil Hammer who had the famous quote, you know, if you have your knee on my neck in the ditch, we're both in the ditch. And that's the example you just gave here, because at the end of the day, the demographics will shift. They have shifted, and they continue to shift. And we can deny the reality of the globe. The globe is black, brown, and everything in between. It's a beautiful place, but white supremacy have working poor whites thinking they're somehow better, and as a result, they have allowed people to brainwash them to undermine their ability to prosper. So here we are sitting in 2021 with opportunities abound in a global economy, and we are stuck in this white supremacist mindset where we don't invest in public education. I grew up in Detroit. I watched Coleman Young go through the process of being married 20 years, but 17 of those years he was either under indictment or investigation, never being convicted of anything, but he pushed forward to try to create a new reality. We have to politically protect those who are willing to forge ahead, economically invest in ourselves, but philosophically understand the collective tissue that we're part of. That if we do this right, others will also prosper. But as others also prospers, it can also create opportunities for us to continue to do it right. But underneath that is this undercurrent in America around white supremacy. Yes. It will always rear its head. We got to snuff it out.
We got to snuff it out, but let me, I'm going to have Ambassador Stith jump in on this because I'm sure he'll understand it. One of the things that, like I was talking about earlier, we talk about the minimum wage and all of that, but what I would like to see us do is to force the Congress and make sure that we are getting a piece of these monies that are the asset allocation funds that are out there, over $69 trillion of monies are there coming from your pension fund, my pension dollars, sovereign wealth fund that goes to homogeneous white males to manage. And every study across the board tells you that when diversity is involved in these investments, the yield on them is so much greater. And we all know that the fiduciary responsibility of all fund manager is to get the most return on their investments. We are not seeing that. That's what I'd like to hear some scream about, making sure that we are able to get some of those monies so that we can be creative, innovating. We can be the next Google, the next Amazon. Ambassador Stith, what do you want to say about that? Because I know you're a businessman overseas and doing a great job.
The first thing I'd say is that part of what we need to transition to is not to simply be articulate about what we don't want and what we don't like, but we need to be more conversant about what we do want. There have been several references to the fact that we really do live in a global village now, both connected by technology and transportation links. It took me 29 hours when I left Johannesburg a couple of days ago, and I did meetings in Joburg before I left, in Dar es Salaam, where I also have an office, in Dubai, and in New York before getting to Los Angeles. So we're connected in an unprecedented way. Africa has a lot of exemplary tourism assets. Major cities are growing by leaps and bounds, so the opportunities that exist are manifold. And even here, when we talk about investment funds, very few of the funds that we manage are invested on the continent. That's where we have to take leadership. If we really believe we're operating in a global environment, we have to start operating globally. And we need to use the power that we have. Look, Tulsa was horrific when the woman gave her testimony yesterday on the news. It was gripping and it was heart-wrenching. But in 1921, if you had asked folks the day after the massacre if they believed we'd elect an African-American president named Barack Hussein Obama, they probably would have said you were suffering from smoke inhalation. We now have an African-American woman as vice president. We've got more members in Congress than we've had before. It's not to say that it's a panacea, but my point is that we have to use the power that we have to further our objectives.
I want to get to President Johnson before he leaves. I have two questions there. One, do you think that that is creating the uprising of all these white supremacists that is around now, that is the great uprising that is happening now because of the Barack Obama and the potential of, with her VP Harris and the potential of her becoming president? And I also want to address to you, President Johnson, before you leave. Immediately after the massacre, many blacks were imprisoned and charged for various minor offenses that prevented them from being able to participate in the workplace, in the workforce. And we see this trend continuing today. Promising black men are charged, killed, or locked up for minor offenses that brings it the effective destruction of their future and ability to participate in any reputable economic activities, vote, provide for their families, or have a voice in any kind forever. What do we do about that, and how are you handling that from the NAACP point of view?
So there was a lot in the questions, right? And then I'm thinking about what the ambassador just said. First, W. Du Bois said it clearly. The question of the 21st century will be race. We've never addressed the question, so the question of race is still with us. And until we are able to resolve that question, we will remain operating in this caste system, a system that exploit and profit off of division. And what's the easiest group to divide is African Americans, because no matter what we do, our pigmentation won't rub off. Race is a social construct. In 1920, when the riot took place, Italians were not considered white, Jews weren't considered white, Irish, you don't consider white, until it became politically expedient for that to take place. What we are witnessing today is a continuation of the legacy of white supremacy. Barack Obama may have woken up something, but it always exists. In fact, I don't even think he woke it up. I think what took place is Fox News sought a way to exploit the division to amplify their profits. And out of that, you get the buffoonery of a Glenn Beck and that whole classification of people leading to the former president. Now, also underneath that is this profound anxiety by whites who are finding themselves being left behind and left out, majority of whites. That's why we have the opioid epidemic, because they're trying to grasp around this big lie they were told that somehow their skin pigmentation made them superior, for them to wake up and realize they're just the average Joe. That at the end of the day, we as a community must hold the system accountable to our needs and interests so that we can snuff out white supremacy where it exists. Our vote is our currency in a democracy. And if we collectively leverage our vote, we should demand accountability. That's why we push for Christian Clark to be over the DOJ, because domestic terrorism in this country, if we don't hold them accountable, we can be assured domestic terrorism will continue. Final point. The penal system was the replacement for the slave system. And the penal system was created. Many of the southern slave states' penal systems were originally called penal farms because they needed field hand to go back to work after the institution of slavery was defeated. So we are still grappling with that. And final point to the ambassador, I absolutely agree. It was amazing to me when I traveled to Tanzania with the brother who lives in Columbus, Mississippi, who now owns 3 hotels in Tanzania. And the first one being in Dodoma, and he began to build them out. And it was amazing how identifying the market, importing the skills he learned here, bringing in the capital that he had, he's been able to build out. For the NAACP, he said, how can some of these things be replicated in Ghana? What can we be doing in other areas where there is identifiable entry points for African Americans to truly participate? Because everybody runs to South Africa. Everyone talks about other countries, but there are other opportunities that exist. How can we import? It's a steep hill, but it's a hill that we can climb because it is a global economy. It is too much money on the table for us to not to try to put our hands on it.
Well, thank you so much for that. And let me brag a little bit, President Johnson, and let you know that we just started a company called Crib MD, and it's a telemedicine doctor house call, and it's an American company here, but we started in Nigeria, and we were one of that 0.01% that get VC funding, and we are on our way to becoming a unicorn. In the next year and a half, we expect to be about a minimum of $3 billion company, and it's coming straight out of Nigeria. Nigeria has over 200 million in its people, with the second fastest growing middle class in the world, and they have the worst healthcare system, and we have over 50,000 people on our wait list. We cannot onboard people fast enough. So these are things that are happening, and this is real. We've been written up in all kinds of papers at this moment, USA Today and all of that. So we are doing amazing work, and this is what I'm hoping to share with different individuals, what we can do globally and as a people, and not to be scared and not to listen to what everybody else is saying. So thank you. I know you have to run. God bless you. I thank you for the work that you're doing. So we were talking about and Hill, you probably could be really good with answering the question about the Black men issue and how we are, being targeted. The Black men are being targeted, and they're losing their opportunity to be able to be productive men and innovative people in society. So do you have any words for men that are struggling out there? Because I know you've gone through a lot of it. Yes.
When I wrote my book, Letters to a Young Brother, I went, that was my first book. And I went, let me see if yeah, here it is. This is it. Letters to a Young Brother. It won the American Library Association Award for Best Book for Young Adults. So it's in every library across the country. And when I went to pitch the book to the publishing companies, they said to me in many ways, Hill, you're pitching us a book for a population that doesn't read. They don't buy books. And I said, have you ever thought to look in the mirror and say, hey, perhaps we're not actually publishing books that they're interested in reading? Because oftentimes the institution or the system wants to actually point the finger rather than actually holding up a mirror. And I said, I guarantee you this book will be a New York Times bestseller. It came out, it was a New York Times bestseller. The point I'm making about that is that Black men have always been underestimated, disregarded. We've been castigated. We've been pushed off to the side. And even moreover, the Black family. There's a whole narrative about how Black men and Black women don't cohabitate, don't get along, don't do business together, all of these things that we don't do. But we all know, I think on here, there are a vast many examples. I mean, you just spoke about traveling with the ambassador throughout Africa. That is a partnership of travel, of actually going for opportunities and working through a friendship as well as a business relationship. So part of it is demystifying the truth from what the narrative is, but I'm less worried about that, to be quite honest. I'm more interested, to Ambassador's earlier point, proactively about what we can build and let the building of it show and prove, rather than trying to change someone else's narrative. Just actually prove them wrong, just like publishing a book and having it become a New York Times bestseller. I didn't need to sit in the rooms with the publishing house and argue with them whether they were right or wrong. I just needed to come out with the book and make sure that it was a New York Times bestseller and it did what it did. And so to that point, that's why I built this tech platform. And I think technology truly, just to your earlier point, Lorna, offers us this amazing opportunity to build things, connect with people globally, but also scale in a very rapid, low barrier to entry, very relatively speaking, low cost way. And that's what our focus needs to be. That's where my focus is. And working collectively to support each other's initiatives, we can scale quite quickly. And I truly believe that.
Okay, Ambassador Stith, we talked, we were trying to get you earlier on about the spirit and the mind. How do you get us into balance? What do you say to us, to Black men and women that are struggling right now, the rehash of the Tulsa massacre? What do you have to say to us to help us spiritually to keep hope alive and to keep going, knowing that we can't stop? We have to continue until we're able to unite and build back better.
If I might go back to the roots, I'd say through many dangers, toils, and snares we have already come, and 'tis grace that has brought us safe thus far, and grace will see us home. If we continue to be a people of faith, and if we work like everything depends on us and pray like everything depends on God, I think we'll be okay. One of the things that Tulsa punctuates, in addition to the negativity, is that despite the destructive and pernicious forces that operate against us, we are a resilient people. And if we maintain a sense of confidence that we can better our condition and that we can better America, and if we maintain the faith that we have the power to do so, we'll get beyond where we are. I mean, so that if we maintain a belief in our ability to change our circumstances and see ourselves as more than victims and the vanquished, and appreciate the power and possibility we have to be victors, I think we can change our circumstances. America isn't easy. I don't care what color you are. Clearly, there are more impediments for those of us who are African Americans or other people of color. But as we've demonstrated, the more we can level the playing field, the higher we can ascend. And if we keep our focus on that, we'll be able to borrow a phrase from former President Obama, we can become the change we seek.
Absolutely, absolutely. Il, I know they're an educator, and we should be wrapping up soon. I think you also trying to get out. What is your thought about, there are two things actually I want to talk about briefly. One is about educating. There are a lot of people in Tulsa today that have not even heard about Tulsa Massacre until George Floyd. It was not being taught in school or any of that. What is your thought on that?
There are only 2 public school textbooks in the country that even mention the largest state-sponsored race massacre in the history of this country. 300 Black men were killed and buried in mass graves, primarily Black men. 800 women and children primarily were put in internment camps. It is not talked about. 5,000 to 10,000 white people descended on Tulsa by 5 a.m. on June 1st, 1921. You look at pictures 24 hours later, it looks like a bomb went off. The first time American citizens were bombed by the air were on American soil was not Pearl Harbor, was not 9/11. It was the Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where the Oklahoma Air National Guard dropped Molotov cocktails on the buildings because they felt that this mob of thousands could not burn it down and destroy it quickly enough. And yet, you're right, the history has been buried, much like the Black men that were killed and buried in unmarked graves. And so right now, there's an effort to start to dig up some of these mass graves to try to identify and use modern forensics. My experience on the show CSI New York, I get a lot of reach outs from the forensic community. I'm friends with a lot of the forensics community. And we have to tell these stories. And to see Mother Fletcher, 107 years old, that was mentioned yesterday, yes, testify before Congress, was moving. It brought me to tears, certainly. But we have to do this work. We have to let people know. We cannot let other people tell our history. And then we also have to take the lessons of what it was to move forward. I want to echo what the ambassador just said about the more we can level the playing field. The reason why with the Black Wall Street Digital Wallet, we're focusing on educating people about investing in Bitcoin and understanding how Bitcoin, digital currency, and cryptocurrency works is because it offers a level playing field. We know that historically capital markets, the equity markets, the housing, banks have treated us systemically completely unfairly. I mean, I just read an article that broke my heart that the sister was in tears that she had a white friend pretend to be the homeowner of her home and the value doubled with the appraisal. Just think about that. Multiply that times millions and millions of homes and how much value has been literally ripped out of our community based off appraisals, based off paying higher interest rates, based off poor credit rating and algorithms, all of those things. A technology like blockchain technology completely levels the playing field. My Bitcoin is equal to anyone else's Bitcoin, no matter how much they hold. And that's why getting out of cash, getting out of the traditional banking system and using digital currencies, digital assets, not only can connect us globally to Nigeria, to Ethiopia, to South Africa, to Ghana, to Tanzania, to all of these different places, in an instant. It can also help us transact without having to go through the same central bank entities that have operated systemically to suppress us. And so that's why I'm so excited about what we're building on the tech side, and that's leveling the playing field is exactly what we need to do, and that's how we use technology to do it.
Absolutely. Well, we're wrapping up now. Time is running out. There's so much to talk about, but I also have a legislation about the allocation, asset allocation, to make sure enough funding is going to people of color, women and people of color, so that we too can be a part of the VC funding and be creative and innovative with our brilliant minds and ideas. I just want to share this with you. In its preliminary recommendation, the commission suggested that the state of Oklahoma pay $33 million in restitution to some of the 121 surviving victims who have been located. However, there's no legislation passed, but there was nobody there to reinforce the legislation. And there's this charity, a church came about and put some monies together, and they collected about $28,000. and gave the survivors $200 each using the fund they raised as a private donation. To what do you guys say about that? And I'm done.
I can't even comment on that. The survivors and the descendants, I've been in touch and speak to many of them. I'm excited about the announcement I will make down there about how their participation in an equity manner in what we're building, because I think that's important. We cannot have folks profiting off of their family's pain without having them participate in some type of meaningful way. So the survivors and descendants have to be in the money flows around the tourism of the Greenwood District, as well as other instruments that come out of it. So that's of critical importance. I was on a Zoom earlier today with John Rogers, who's the chairman and founder of Ariel Capital Management.
Yeah.
He is descendants of J.B. Stratford. He believes that his family lost somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million from the destruction, and that's just his family, from the destruction of one of the largest, most successful Black-owned hotels that J.B. Stratford, his great-grandfather, owned. The amounts are paltry, but certainly these descendants and families and survivors need to be compensated.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. This was very enlightening and empowering, and I wish we had some more time. And Hale, we definitely got to get follow up and talk some more. I talk to Ambassador all the time. I get some of his wisdom from time to time. So definitely we'll be in touch with you, gentlemen. So again, thank you both for sharing your afternoon with me.
Thank you.
Today, as we acknowledge the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre, it may be tempting to view this as rehashing of history, but it's not. While we are not physically watching Tulsa burn, the folks responsible for the Greenwood Massacre are still well and kicking today, carrying on their systematic oppression of Black folks in a more modern way. I would like to thank my guests for joining me here today, Ambassador Charles Stith, President Derrick Johnson, and Attorney Harper. This conversation was enlightening and necessary as we recognize the 1921 Tulsa Massacre. We must know our history so that we don't repeat it. As the famous Maya Angelou would say, the more you know your history, the more liberated you are. So ladies and gentlemen, let's continue to learn. Let's continue to stay informed and seek the truth in everything we do. The power of finance is real. Finance power as used to suppress countries, let alone you and I as individuals. Know your worth. There is still much work to be done to close the financial gap. But I believe the only way we get this done is by educating ourselves, lifting our voices in unison, and demanding more from our elected officials. Let's band together and build back better. Thank you for joining me. See you on the next Live with Lorna. Good night.